Director Comey, in my remaining time, I want to go back to the investigation, and I just want to give you another opportunity to maybe finish by explaining the context that you were operating in. But I want to create the context going back to when the investigation first began. It was already a part of media attention. I think on June the 27th, the then Attorney General met with the spouse of someone who's subject to an active investigation, which was at the very least an unusual encounter, which also spun up the media. And then I think it was July 5th that you made the statement that I think a few of the things you've said that I guess based on the evidence you were gathering, there was one component, it was like removing a frame from a huge finished jigsaw puzzle and dumping pieces on the floor, something else that the media ties into. Then you said there is evidence of potential violations of statutes regarding the handling of classified information. And you went on to say that under similar circumstances, a person who's engaged in these activities would likely be subject to security or administrative sanctions. I mean, that was the tough part of the statement that you made. But you went on to say that you didn't believe a reasonable-minded prosecutor would bring a case even though there was evidence of potential violations, and that you were expressing your view that the Justice Department should not proceed. Is that typical for you to go to a point and say, I've gathered this information, there may be evidence of violations, but we don't think any reasonable prosecutor in the DOJ would pursue it, therefore we're going to recommend not pursuing it? Is that common?
For an FBI director to do that?
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. I never imagined it ever until this circumstance.
Was there some logic in that at the time that you were making that decision based on the information that you were provided? Was there the same sort of thought process that you're going through there to have it rise to that level that then led to your October 28th notification of Congress that you had to look at other evidence that had been identified on Anthony Weiner's PC? What I'm trying to do is say it looks like you were trying to provide as much transparency and as much real-time information as you had.
Yeah.
And then on November the 6th, the FBI apparently moved heaven and earth and got something done in a matter of days that they thought was going to take beyond the election. But you were in that pressure cooker. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to glue together, I think, the decision for your actions on July the 5th and how I think there's parallels between that and what you ultimately did on October the 28th and then November the 6th. And I'll yield back the remaining of my time for the answer.
And I've lived my whole life caring about the credibility and the integrity of the criminal justice process, that the American people believe it to be and that it be in fact fair, independent, and honest. And so what I struggled with in the spring of last year was, how do we credibly complete the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails if we conclude there's no case there? The normal way to do it would be to have the Department of Justice announce it. And I struggled as we got closer to the end of it with a number of things that had gone on, some of which I can't talk about yet, that made me worry that the department leadership could not credibly complete the investigation and decline prosecution without grievous damage to the American people's confidence in the justice system. And then the capper was, and I'm not picking on the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, who I like very much, but her meeting with President Clinton on that airplane was the capper for me. And I then said, you know what, the department cannot by itself credibly end this. The best chance we have as a justice system is if I do something I never imagined before, step away from them and tell the American people, look, here's what the FBI did, here's what we found, here's what we think. And that offered us the best chance of the American people believing in the system, that it was done in a credible way. That was a hard call for me to make, to call the Attorney General that morning and say, I'm about to do a press conference and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to say. And I said to her, I hope someday you'll understand why I think I have to do this. But look, I wasn't loving this. I knew this would be disastrous for me personally, but I thought this is the best way to protect these institutions that we care so much about. And having done that, and then having testified repeatedly under oath, we're done, this was done in a credible way, there's no there, that when the Anthony Weiner thing landed on me on October 27th, and there was a huge, this is what people forget, new step to be taken, we may be finding the golden missing emails that would change this case. If I were not to speak about that, it would be a disastrous, catastrophic concealment. It was an incredibly painful choice, but actually not all that hard, between very bad and catastrophic. I had to tell Congress that we were taking these additional steps. I prayed to find a third door. I couldn't find it. 2 actions: speak or conceal. I don't think many reasonable people would do it differently than I did, no matter what they say today. If you were standing there staring at that on October 28th, would you really conceal that? So I spoke. Again, the design was to act credibly, independently, and honestly, so the American people know the system's not rigged in any way. And that's why I felt transparency was the best path. In July, and then I wasn't seeking transparency. In October, I sent that letter only to the chairs and rankings. Yeah, did I know they were going to leak it? Of course. I know how Congress works, but I did not make an announcement at that point. And then my amazing people moved heaven and earth to do what was impossible, to get through those emails by working 24 hours a day, and then said, honestly, sir, we found tons of new stuff, doesn't change our view. And I said, are you sure? Don't do it just because you're under pressure. They said, we're sure. We don't believe there's a case against Hillary Clinton. And I said, then by God, I got to tell Congress that, and know I'm going to get a storm at me for that. But what I can promise you all along is, I said to people, you may think we're idiots, we're honest people. We made judgments trying to do the right thing, and I believe, even with hindsight, we made the right decisions. And I'm sorry for that long answer.